Hi, I'm Meta Spencer. I'm going to have a good time today. I am going to get caught up with a very dear old friend, and I should tell you why he's such a special person in my history. And it is a history because we haven't been in touch for about 20 years. But this is Ed Stanford. And the last I saw him, Ed Stanford was the president of McGraw-Hill's higher education department, selling books. I mean, he didn't go out and peddle books, but he had. And he, in fact, had helped people develop books. And that was the great part from my point of view, because he had previously worked same sort of role at Prentice Hall. And I had a job writing a book for Prentice Hall. So for several years, he and I worked together, developing not just one edition of my textbook, Foundations of Modern Sociology, but it went into 11 editions. Did you know that, Ed? 11 editions. And they did very well. In fact, I think I remember the number 52,000. That was kind of like a couple of editions when sold that many. And of course, how many books you sell is an important criterion in the textbook business. So I was producing a textbook in sociology for introductory students. And now and then I still run into people who are grandparents now who say, I still have your textbook. I took a course with your textbook. And it's such a fun thing to have happen, Doesn't have much anymore, but it had.
Well, I sorry to interrupt, but I still have a copy of the first edition of that, which is on my shelf here, and I showed that to you a week or so ago.
Mm-hmm. It was beautiful, yeah. Anyway, that was fun, and working with you was just such a joy. You had no life of your own in those days, Ed, because I would pester you with silly questions.
Long ago, had the idea that I wanted a library in my house. I wanted a room that was just books and CDs, and so I did this about 15 years ago now. So these books were bought intentionally. There's a lot of music history here and history over here and so forth. And I was in part thinking that I could just go look up stuff here. And that was the point of having a library. That was before search. And so this is nothing like what I imagined, because while I do get up and go get those books off the shelf, never to just look something up, because it's so much quicker to sit here and look up anything. And I can say that there is no longer a print dictionary here. I used to have a print dictionary on both floors of my house because I knew I wouldn't walk very far to look something up. There's no point. You can't look up anything in a print dictionary as fast as you can look it up nowadays, and you can get 6 different definitions, so forth. So that's all changed, but I must say I still love being in a room full of books.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I have books all around me too, and
I noticed.
Well, you don't see a tenth of them, and I gave away most when I retired. So I had a room, an office full of books, and I just put them in a great big box and dragged it out to the hall and just left it, because I knew that students would come and take what they wanted, and good. That would be the end of that.
Yeah.
But, then I had to do the same thing here. But the advantage, of course, began 15 years ago with online books. And I have an iPad, and my library consists of several hundred iPad books.
Right.
I almost never buy a print book.
I must say, people of our generation and generations, when you say the word book, you mean a physical book in print. The technology is print. And I don't know where the cutoff is. And certainly people who've had books, meaning print books, all their lives, also say things like, I love the smell of the book, I love the feel of the book, I really still want print books, and so forth. 20-year-olds and 10-year-olds don't feel that way necessarily. They're having a very different experience. And part of what's interesting to me about this is that there's the notion that books are going, or the textbooks are going away. Textbooks, by the way, now in higher education are somewhere north of 80% digital now. The print is already well on its way gone in the higher ed world, less so
One of the things
K-12.
I wanted to ask you, because we're going to talk mostly about the impact of AI and digital
Yeah.
technology on the book publishing industry.
Well, I find myself reminding people that what was important about the thing we call the book wasn't the physical properties of it. It was the content. The value was the content. And the content, so when people say textbooks have gone away, the print technology is going away, but the content is still there. And that's what and you're just accessing it with a different technology than what was print.
After I retired 28 years ago or something, I continued teaching occasionally for free until finally the university said, you can't teach for free because graduate students are complaining that maybe they would get a job teaching that course if you didn't do it for free. So they made me stop. But for a number of years, I kept on teaching a course every year or something for free. And the last time I did, I put only on the reading list. I assigned Kindle books, you know.
Yeah.
And some of the students came to me and said, "No, tell me how to get this in paper. I want to read a real book."
Right. So you just said real book, as if what you read on the screen isn't real. Yes, it is. It's the content is the same.
Well, sometimes you need to make the distinction and sometimes you don't. But in that case, it was important to her to have a real book. I'm very interested. Well, I'd be crazy if I were not interested. Everybody should be interested in the growing impact of AI because it's going to be the biggest change in the history of the world, practically. And I don't know whether it's a good thing or bad, all told. I've never been so ambivalent about anything. I think it will be the biggest breakthrough in human history. Unless it kills us all first, and that's almost equally probable. So I have really mixed feelings about this, and of course everybody else does. And people take positions that are very important. For example, I run this magazine, Peace Magazine, and I use AI all the time.
Right.
I have it edit things for me. I of course do research with it. And I don't, well, yeah, even in the magazine, there have been 2 or 3 times when I published an article that was almost 100% written by AI. And there's a kind of a moral issue for me because I could put it in and put my own name on it, which I would never do as just outright lie. But I can put it in without any attribution, no byline, or I can fake it, or I could try to not let it be known to the extent to which I'm using it. There are various options, and I tell you, I get people mad at me, whichever choice I make, and I don't want to fool anybody. So we've had a lot of conflicts with people both on our staff. For example, about 3 covers of the magazine have been pictures that I had AI draw, design, beautiful photos or, artwork.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are articles that I don't mind. To me, the important thing is the quality of the publication. Not only the publication of the magazine, which is, again, no longer in print, in paper, but we do publish it online in much greater numbers. But also, I produce these shows, forums with like what we're doing right now. This will go on to Substack, and people will watch it. There's something like 10,000 people will get this. Not all of them will watch it, but a lot
Right.
will. And and then I have AI write an article about each one of these episodes, and I post that separately. I twiddle with it. I do. Oftentimes, I really rewrite it, but not necessarily. I mean, if it's fine, why? And AI is a good writer. You hear people complaining about how they hallucinate, and you have to watch it because they do invent things or get things wrong, mostly because of the cutoff date. They had one of the AI was arguing with me and said, Mark Carney is not the Prime Minister of Canada. And really emphatic that quite sure that he was not.
Yeah.
But of course he is. And so you have to be careful. But actually on the whole, some of these AI platforms are just really good writers, better than I am. And that's hard to take, hard to say. So we have all this conflict of people who some want to have nothing whatever to do with AI, and then other people just sort of go along with whatever I say, but mostly we get in arguments about it. And I am not sure what is the impact on the whole book publishing industry. So I'm wondering, I thought I'd talk to you and get your impression of what is AI going to do to your McGraw-Hill, for example.
Yeah. Well, let me, when I talk about this again, we're talking about content. It's really important to kind of loosen up the notion of a book is a print book. But usually with various kinds of content, and certainly in the academic world, you attribute authorship to somebody for that content. So one of the things I find both useful but also just interesting to think about is, what were we doing all this time? Go back over, let's say, the 40, from the back into the 70s and 80s, and where we put an author's name on the book, which suggested to the people that that person wrote this book. Okay. There was, if you go back to the 60s, there was a much greater sense for textbooks of that they were what we referred to as author driven, meaning authors did draft things. We got copy editors for them and proofreaders. But by and large, they were whatever the author wrote, and we had a much lesser role. And we published a lot of bad books. As time went on, we provided all kinds of, so your experience with what was then Prentice Hall, publishing your sociology textbook, had all kinds of sources and help and editing. And authorship didn't mean that you wrote every word that was there or you placed every comma that was there, but it meant that you were the final say. Mm-hmm. We were suggesting that you hadn't just taken this from any place else without attribution, and that at the end of the day, you either did form those words together, and or you approved. So you approved a lot of what a copy editor did, and or you rejected things the copy editor did, and that's a lot to do with the notion of authorship and attribution. And another good example is when a president gives a speech, the words are attributed to that president, but we all know that the president has speechwriters. You'd have to be an insider to know which speechwriter wrote those words. There are a few famous quotes that something Kennedy said was attributed to Sorensen, but by and large, the words become the president's, even though he didn't write them. Mm-hmm. He spoke them. But so authorship has to do with, and there are a lot of the ways textbook writing evolved, led to much more collaborative kinds of things going on, or other kinds of help. We probably also back in the 60s assumed that the author went and did whatever research was required by themselves, went to the library to look up things they needed to look up. At some point, we realized we could pay for graduate students to do the research work and bring in Xerox copies. And so that notion of authorship is somebody sitting in a closet by themselves doing everything hasn't been true for years. Authorship means that this is the person responsible for saying this is what this ought to be, and somehow they've arrived at this in the end, either by their own work and or by. So there was always collaboration. So now what's interesting is. And we didn't always keep track of who the collaborators were, and they didn't get mentioned much other than in the preface to the book. Maybe you thank some collaborators.
Okay, but of course, to be honest, we have to acknowledge that my book was, in fact, an ambiguous one for reasons that maybe you should explain.
Well, your book was unique in that way, in that there was a series of books called Foundations of Modern Sociology that Prentice Hall had already published in the 60s, which with experts on each subfield writing a book. And I can guarantee you that in those books, they mostly wrote them by themselves with not very much help from us. And so when we were doing the first edition of your book, you were free to take whatever you needed from the Deviance book to write a Deviance chapter, for example, or and we acknowledged in the preface of the book that's how this book came to be. So that's I know we did not use the word collaboration because that suggested active live. You weren't in touch with those authors. We sent it to them they saw the chapters. I don't remember any of them saying much back. But they didn't author your chapter. You authored the chapter, but you didn't have to start by going to the library to read everything on Deviance. So I think it's important to think of pre-AI. There was a lot of collaboration going on to create content, and you could think other kinds of content, newspapers, magazines, and so forth, where it's almost never a solo authoring thing with no input from any place.
Well, and also I can claim the truth, which was that every time I do a new edition, I made more changes.
You did the work.
Yeah, I did the work, and not only that, but there'd be more and more changes. So very little, if anything, of the original these little black books.
Yes.
Still found in any of the later editions.
I would say by probably the third or fourth edition, there was nothing left of that origination. And not only that, when you revised, you had another kind of help. We had reviewers, other professional academics, professional teachers, who were reviewing the chapter in the current edition and giving suggestions for changes that needed to be made. And we did one round of that would have been with just experts in each subfield, as well as teachers who would use the book. So again, there's a collaborative process going on there that produces a book that has your name on it. So now there's this possibility that this thing we call AI changes that collaboration significantly. But I find it useful in conversations I'm having with just any number of people about AI to talk about word processing. Nobody even talks about word processing anymore, but that was a massive change in how we did things. I think it's interesting that, well, first of all, word processing came along in the late 70s and into the 80s. It preceded personal computers. And the first word processors were deckmates. They were big machines, and we had a word processing department that replaced the typing pool. So yes, it eliminated some jobs.
I had an Osborne computer, which was about the size of a portable sewing machine. And that was my first computer. And yeah, it was really a wonderful thing. It really made
Well,
my life a lot
so
easier.
those changes are so in place now. So you think about that. We used to provide advances to authors for a typist to type their manuscript.
Mhm.
That went away because once people, what I can say is that the conversion it started in the late 80s, 70s into the 80s. Once somebody converted to word processing, that they themselves were now, instead of writing on a pad or typing themselves, they were then nobody ever went back. It
Yeah.
all went one direction because why? It was so efficient. And a phrase that I remember from those days that I never hear now and have yet to find somebody who remembers it, we referred to that as captured keystrokes.
I don't remember
That,
that.
yes, nobody does. But the typewriter only took an action, put a letter on a piece of paper, but that's all it did. Nothing was captured in that. When word processing came, the change was all those keystrokes were captured, it became into an electronic file. So that was a huge change in how content of various sources was handled. Now we don't even talk about that now because we're so used to that. But I also always remember that, after that into the like early 90s when email came along, I remember people saying, oh, this is going to wreck letter writing. That letter writing meant you hand wrote a letter, put it in an envelope, addressed the envelope, licked the stamp, licked the envelope, and sent it off. I can easily say that letter writing, at least for me, got better. I am in touch with far more people in this world than I ever was in that handwritten world. And yes, when there's appropriate to send a thank you note or a condolences note or whatever, sure, that's appropriate to buy a card and handwrite the note. But it didn't wreck letter writing and increase contacts with people and so forth. So these technologies have had the effect of improving lots of things with some cost. Typist jobs went away, but the whole process got more efficient. So fast forward to AI.
Well, now look, already though, I've been the editor and publisher of Peace
Right.
now since 1983, and
Yes.
started it and ran it and so on. And about 2, 3, 4 years ago, I forgot exactly when, it was during COVID, our printer went bankrupt because nobody was,
Yeah.
able to do
Right.
stuff. And so instead of getting a new printer and continuing to print magazines, which we couldn't distribute properly because you have to mail them. And
Right.
so
Right.
at best, we were able to send a couple of thousand out
Right.
by mail, but then we just went online
You went online. Absolutely.
and now we are producing and emailing every time, over 10,000 in different forms.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course they don't all get opened because why would anybody bother to open
Well,
all this
how
stuff?
much do I open the magazines I subscribe? I still subscribe to a couple of print magazines, but if I subscribe to the print, I'm also getting the online version, both for several magazines. But when a magazine gets mailed to me, I've never had magazines back when they were all print where I read every article. I had some that I never read. If I had 5 or 6 articles out of anything to read, that was a lot. So there's always been that kind of thing with magazine. But the online version of your magazine turns out to make everything better over. You reach more people. The
Yeah.
expense is different.
We couldn't afford to send to foreign countries. It's just
Yeah,
too
yeah,
expensive to mail. But it doesn't make any difference where you are in the world now. You can get it by
yeah,
email.
yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So you said earlier that when you're working on Peace Magazine that you've done. I think you said done. I can't. Maybe you said written some article, or some articles appeared in the magazine that were basically authored by AI.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's not a correct statement, because AI wasn't just on its own. You were interacting with AI. You were prompting it, directing it, reacting to what it does. And then when you gave a reaction, it reacted to you.
Well, here's what actually happens. Usually, for example, what we're doing right now, we'll go on Substack and three other places, YouTube and our website, as a video, which people can watch an hour long. And we make a transcript of it. And then I have AI, I send the transcript to AI, say, write a magazine article about this. And it will take the hour-long thing and make it into however long I want it to be, like 1,000 words or 15 words. And it will write a very decent article. So you have to check it. But that work is based on what we're doing right now, this conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And in fact, nowadays, sometimes when it produces this magazine article, as I call it, although I can publish it on Substack as a separate standalone post, which a lot of people prefer to read because they can get the gist of our conversation very quickly, and they don't have time to spend an hour. So I do it most often on Substack, but I also have put in articles. Sometimes I put them in the magazine once in a great while. And here's the interesting thing: when they produce it nowadays, some of these platforms, I don't know whether it's Gemini or Claude or what, it'll come out with a byline for itself. It'll say by AI, or it'll say, last time it said by a contributing editor. No, contributing author or something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Am I legally or morally or in any other way supposed to put that on there? I don't know. Tell me about copyright law. No, we're going to get.
We're back on the issue of attribution.
Right.
There certainly is a long-standing practice of books written by, where there's authorship as told to, or with a co-author. The Art of the Deal was not written by the person to whom the authorship is attributed. And now that we know what we know about him, it's unlikely he wrote anything in that book. And probably didn't read it because he doesn't seem to be able to read books. Exactly. But the attribution is important. But we didn't say your textbook was by Meta Spencer, copy edited by so and so.
Yeah.
Okay. So if and we didn't say spell check by so and so. And I can tell you that however much money we spent in time on copy editors and proofreaders, that process can be done by the machine faster and more accurately than any person can do it. Right. No matter how in 900 page books, textbooks, the idea that our human eyes, and more than one person's eyes, are going to catch all those mistakes. No, I don't think we ever published a book that didn't have corrections to be made in reprints and so forth. So that spell checking is done better by machine, but we've all had the experience of spell check corrected something in a way that changed the median entirely and so forth. So you still need human eyes to look at it and try to avoid those kinds of things. But truly, the spell checking that goes on now is so much faster and just better, more accurate than what any proofreader will do, because proofreaders lose concentration at some point and miss something, right? And about the only way we had to proofread something better was to have 3 proofreaders or whatever, which we did on certain books. But I think it's important to think about the kinds of collaboration, and what you've described about Peace Magazine is you have AI, you use AI in a collaborative way. You are interacting with it, you are directing it, it is responding to you. You said it's a better writer than I am, or things like that. Doesn't matter. Many of our editors were better writers than our authors, and absolutely improved a paragraph when we spent that kind of time, because they could. And another issue is the whole notion of audience, who you're trying to address. In the textbook business, we weren't trying to address teachers and academics. We were trying to address students who didn't already know this stuff. So the process, there was an editorial job to go paragraph by paragraph. And I thought of it, copy editing was really line level editing, sentence level editing, but there was a paragraph job, which was every paragraph needed to be understood by somebody who didn't already understand that content. That's what a student is, and that's who these books were for.
Well,
so
it's interesting, because that's very important for my role as the host of a conversation like this.
Yes.
People understand you, but I often interview scientists who are talking about very technical,
Yes.
mathematical formulas and acronyms for this or that, and they use their language. And my job, the most important job,
is to fix it.
Stop. Here, what is it you're talking about right now?
Yes, absolutely. That kind of thing is very important. And so, can AI be trained? Clearly, AI is trainable. So if I used to think Time Magazine for years, I think this no longer applies, but I always could rely on Time Magazine for decades to give me in one page a balanced view of what informed people knew about this topic. And they use words that I rarely had to look up a word in Time Magazine. In the New Yorker, I have to look up words. All right. So one of the editorial rules we got in textbook publishing by the 80s was that if you're going to use a word they won't know, you have to define it. And so for technical stuff, that's what the book is supposed to do. But if you're going to use a word they won't know that isn't a technical term, it's just a word they won't know, don't use it, because they're not going to look it up. So if you make the assumption they're not going to look it up, then quit using words they won't know, because you're communicating less, not more. You're not building their vocabulary because they won't look it up, and so forth. So there's that. There's an authoring job that somewhere belongs in here that takes into account the audience you're trying to get to, and makes adjustments in the content. So when you ask a question, you can do this by asking a question of the person who's speaking at a different level, or speaking with technology that the audience isn't going to know. You interrupt and ask them to explain better, and so forth. And you can do that in print.
I have to thank you and thank whomever you hired to be my first, I don't want to say copy editor, but the editor who actually did this kind of taking big words and making them into shorter words, and long sentences and make them into shorter sentences.
That's what we came to call a development editor, not a copy. Copy editors are sentence level correctness.
The thing was, I am a good writer now just because of that experience.
Yes, absolutely.
But I found it very painful, because I would use a nuanced term, a fancy, very sophisticated way of putting something, and this person would take, I'd say, criterion, and this person cross it out and put in standard. Okay, a standard is a sort of an acronym. I mean, a short version of saying criterion, but there's more to it with the criterion. And I felt you were taking my beautiful language and turning it into pablum, and I was so upset when I was reading this, because it felt like you were taking my sophistication and mashing it down and making me puerile. But really, that I learned from that experience.
Yes.
Very much. It's affected my the whole career afterwards. So
that process was forcing you to think about the audience more. And if you take the kind of publishing I was involved with, academic publishing, but for undergraduate students for the most part, um, and most of the authors, virtually all the authors, were otherwise uh, full-time faculty publishing in their discipline and so forth. Um, when you write journal articles, you're writing for other people who already understand what you're talking about. When you write textbooks, you are writing specifically for people who have not paid any entry price, who don't know what you're talking about. So you have to explain it differently. And that we came to call the people who did that kind of editing developmental editors. They were really to work at a paragraph level, not just a sentence level. And so it was about, does this communicate? Does every paragraph work for a reader that encounters that paragraph with ignorance, not with expertise? So anyway, I think my main point is that this has always been a collaborative process, and we got better and better at it long before there was anything we were calling AI. So AI is one way to look at AI.
We're coming to the time when the books will be written by AI, and they'll do a better job of writing it than I can. And we will no longer have this conversation because it won't even be true anymore. These machines are going to do the writing. And right now already, I think there are questions about copyright.
Yes.
I don't know what the law requires or expects, or I don't know what it should require.
Neither does the law. No. This is one of these things that's going to take a long time to work out. But again, we're on so I mentioned that there's this issue of attribution, who gets credit. So with attribution also goes ownership. And we have things that we refer to as public domain.
Come on, can AI own anything?
AI companies could own something. AI companies right now are, in the view of some people, stealing from all the people who do own content.
I know, but now.
Okay, well that has not seen enough court fights yet.
We're not very far from the time when the truth is that AI will be writing the book.
Well, so I'll give you an example just to stay in the textbook example. You had various kinds of collaborators in writing your textbook at various times and so forth. And again, you were the author in the authority. It was under your authority that became the final version, no matter what the inputs were. Okay. So what if I could take the 7 best-selling Principles of Biology books? Those are about 1,000-page books, textbooks, 2-term. And I take all the contents in, I just ingest all of that, put all that in an AI thing, and have the AI produce a book, produce one out of those 10, make one. I would say most people would think that's illegal today. On the other hand, were there things like that kind of going on before? Could be. There have been almost no lawsuits in the textbook world in 40, 50 years, lawsuits of copyright infringement. I can count them on, I think, one hand, and at most two. I think one hand.
But I had explicit permission to use the Foundations of Modern Sociology.
Oh, yeah. But we advertised that.
When there was a book about religion that I was using it sort of the way, it was also part of a series, but a different series.
Yeah.
Didn't have permission to use that. And I drew too heavily from that. And your development editor caught me and said, "Watch out. You are taking something you don't have the right to use."
But we could have gone and gotten permission to do that, and acknowledged that author in the preface or something, and that would have been fine.
Yeah, but the point is that already I had to be careful that I wasn't going around just stealing from books
Okay, so again, so let's take the example of, I'm going to take not just any 10 biology books, but the bestsellers, so that 95% of the students taking biology are using one of these books. And by the way, there would be massive similarities among those books, at least in terms of coverage and so forth. So you cannot own the table of contents. Nobody owns the table of contents. That belongs to the field. I've heard people say, well, but to do that, you're taking curated content and you're going to re-curate that, and you can own the re-curation. Again, I think that's only, I just say that's a court case, or that's a dozen court cases, and that's a dozen years to get through. I mean, who knows I don't know how long it's going to take and what kinds of things are, but you certainly can imagine that with this technology, you could do that easily.
Well, there's this case going on, which already has gone 4 or 5 years, I think, but I'm sure it's not making much progress. I think it's the New York Times is suing, I don't know, is it Facebook or I don't
know about that.
Maybe it's just plain Google, saying you're taking all of the information from our coverage of news and pitching it as if you own it. And New York Times is suing big time for that.
Well, and sorry to interrupt, but if you look at the bottom of articles like if I copy something from a newspaper, at the bottom it says copyright by the Hartford Courant or whatever, and you may not use this. I forget the exact language, but you are not allowed to use this content or to ingest this content in your AI. Now, if I'm an AI company, I might say, no, you can't tell me I can't do that. So I think the ownership, well, again, the things you have to put together, there's authorship, who or attribution, who is being attributed, and then does it represent ownership? So as an author, you can attribute things to somebody else, you can borrow, and you make reference to where you got it. But I can guarantee you in a biology textbook, there aren't any in fact, most textbooks, there aren't footnotes, because you're not taking the word. I mean, you're talking about stuff that's standard in a field.
I see. Mm-hmm.
And nobody owns what's standard in the field. But then it always then goes beyond that to the particular expressions. So to prove a copyright infringement case, you have to be able to show lots and lots of very direct copying. And generally, so AI could be trained not to copy that way.
Well, also, I mean, even within, let's say, the New York Times, I presume there's a difference between stealing a material that was on the front page reporting what went on in the Gulf War, or something like that, and is taking language from Tom Friedman's column. I mean, yes. I think you definitely need to give it credit to Tom Friedman.
Well, you can't copyright the facts of what went on, but you can copyright all various opinions about those facts, Friedman's or whoever's. And also there's an editorial process at the New York Times, so that when they publish an article, while it has facts in it, there's still an organization to it and so forth. And the New York Times says they own that story.
Mm-hmm.
And you must, at least if you're using parts of it, attribute that to them. And if you use too much of it, it's either illegal or you need to pay them. There's an interesting, just to make one, in textbooks, we for a while we were trying to use a little epitaph above the chapter title or below the chapter title about something. And at any time we asked for permission to use something from a popular song or a song title, it was always denied. But we at least knew that we couldn't use the words from a song, even if we footnoted it. That was not fair use. Or at least the people who owned that content treated it that way, and it wasn't important enough to fight it.
Here, look here. Could you claim that you are the owner of this episode of our video because it's your thoughts that I'm exploring.
I think you have a better claim on the ownership of the content of this conversation than I do, because you organized it and you're the one putting it out someplace. So I don't think I have any claim on that. And I think there's probably also no market for what I'm saying, so that changes.
Tom Friedman were to say, these ideas are all mine, and it doesn't really even belong to the New York Times, it belongs to me. Would he have a case?
No, because the New York Times pays him and owns the copyright. The New York Times probably owns the copyright, not him. Interestingly, people in the, again, publishing example, people believe that if it says copyright by Meta Spencer, that you own no, you signed a contract that gave us all the ownership rights. You received a royalty right in exchange for that. And Friedman receives a fee right to write for the Times, but they would own the content, not him.
I've been running an inquiry where I have a set of friends or members of Project Save the World or other people who get together and talk about climate change. And then we meet for a series of 5 weeks, every week for an hour, and talk about it. And there's homework assigned. And at first I was sending links to videos and to articles and say, before we have our meeting, study up on this material, because this is what we'll be talking about. So you should do your preparation. And I would refer to things that are already in print or whatever. Now I go to AI and say, write up a preliminary essay on this topic for this week's show or this conversation. And this week we're going to be talking about albedo, the importance of albedo in reducing climate change. And it will write instantly, like a 1,500 word little essay, and I email it straight to all of the participants.
Okay.
Now, if I were teaching, I'm no longer teaching. If I were, I would do something equivalent to that for my students, because I think that would be a very digestible thing for them to receive as preparation for the conversation in, let's say, the seminar. But then that means you're not going to sell any textbooks to me anymore.
Well, let me give an example of that. There was always a practice, not so much not in freshman, sophomore courses, but in upper level undergraduate courses, of having a list of journal articles to read. And so the syllabus for the course would list, if there was a book, it said that, or two books, whatever, but it would also give you a list of readings, and usually week by week or whatever. And those readings were in journals in the reference library. Okay. If you have a class of enough people, sending them to the library to read those things gets to be really cumbersome. So somewhere in the 80s, people started doing what they called course packs. They would Xerox those articles, and it made it much more convenient for students. They didn't have to go to the library. They didn't have to get there and find out somebody else had already checked that out, and you got to sit there. Or
they used to razor blade them out.
That's what I was going to say next. Or you find out that the copy had been, that particular article was stolen from the journal. Yes. So course packs solved that. And when, and so who made money off of that was the copy shop. So you assigned a 200 pages of Xerox material. The copy shop charged whatever they charged for it. And so we sued them. We publishers in general. We didn't publish that kind of stuff, but other people did. It became known as the Kinko's suit.
Oh, yeah.
Kinko's was the copy shop. This was early 90s. And we won that suit. This wasn't about textbooks, because textbooks didn't get put in course packs, not even chapters. Course packs were journal articles, basically. So it was really the journal articles journals who were being. So we won that suit, and all that changed is that you had to get permission for those articles from the publisher of the journal and pay a fee. So that's what happened, and there's something called the Copyright Clearance Center got developed to facilitate that process. So that changes in a world where you could do this all digitally, but you still need permission to use it. That came under fair use, and the first time, like if you are teaching a course and you throw an article or a New York Times article at the students, the first time you do it, it's fair use. But if you then do that regularly, it's no longer fair use. Maybe the issue is there much greater potential abuse of copyright, of ownership of content in an AI world than there was before. And I think the answer to that probably is almost certainly yes, because it's so much more efficient.
My guess is that that teachers are not going to be assigning textbooks, period. Because
they will. Yes, they will.
If we have a chapter on, let's say, albedo in a textbook I was writing about climate change,
right,
bioengineering, which is a very good thing to write a textbook about, by the way. If you have any influence in that, I think there's a lot of reason to produce such a book. But there would be one chapter about albedo, and there is no source now that's a good place. I would just say, AI, Gemini, please write a chapter for me to send to my students to read before our next seminar meeting. And it'd be, McGraw-Hill would be bye-bye.
Possible.
But you don't see that now.
No. But I do see, I think the potential for cheating has always been there. So let's take what we call open source content. Mm-hmm. There are open source textbooks. Nobody knows where that content came from in open source. When I published a textbook, we knew where the content came from. We know somebody didn't just plain steal it from another textbook. And then there's this issue of when you say AI, that you instructed AI to go create a chapter, let's say you call it that, create a chapter on this topic. You won't know where that came from. You'd have to query it more to find out where did you get this or that. Yeah. So I think there's always been the potential for copying, and I was 40 some years in textbook publishing. I know of only 2 instances for our company where somebody literally stole from another book. And so we immediately took it off the market. And we had one other case where somebody stole from a history text, much of it. A copywriter thought, this looks familiar,
The real problem of cheating mostly now that teachers in universities worry about is that the students cheat.
Again, there are earlier instances of this that, English teachers certainly were aware that there was something called Cliff's Notes for the literature they were assigning. So if you didn't read the book, you just read the Cliff Notes. I think most English teachers can tell. I think most English teachers probably would prefer that you read the Cliff Notes and not read it all. And so I mean, and who's being cheated? So you didn't read the book, but I just think the opportunity for various kinds of cheating is greater. There are teachers who can go out of their way to avoid the use of AI, and I think it's going to go another way. If you're a high school teacher, I have a son who is, you're going to see it as your responsibility to teach them how to use AI efficiently and effectively.
I would love to say that that's what people should be doing. Some of my friends complain about we have to use multiple choice tests now because we can't have people submit essays for their marks.
Because we can't grade it.
Yeah. Well, not only are there too many students and we can't mark them, but also you could get AI to mark them probably. But that, we can't trust that the students are do the work themselves.
No, wait a minute. There's 2 issues there. First of all, this everything we call school learning depends on whether there are proctored exams or not. And the history of education in the Western world is proctored exams. When you, to get credit for the course you take and to be moved along, you have to pass tests. Those tests are not take home.
That's at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level,
Yeah, well, graduate level is a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
and that's also at the K-12 level. Kids have to pass tests. So what could happen is you're absolutely right. Nobody gives, or people have massive use in certain disciplines, a lot of disciplines, of multiple choice question. They can't use them because they can't grade them in time to turn their grades in. Most people, I mean, good multiple choice can actually discriminate, but most people would agree that open-ended or essay questions will tell you more about what somebody understands. There are that AI is already out. There are companies that have AI that can grade essay and open-ended. So I'd say most teachers would probably believe that open-ended or essay questions are more revealing of what was learned than multiple choice.
Oh,
so here's a chance to improve the assessment.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But what you were leading into was the thing that I wish I could say to my friends, that instead of forbidding the students to use AI to write their essays,
right,
you should be teaching them how to use AI better and benefit from the cooperation with
absolutely
AI.
Absolutely.
I don't know how to do that. If I were teaching now, I actually wouldn't know how to tell them how to benefit from using AI. I mean, I don't know that there's a
well, unless they can do proctored exams. There are all kinds of online degrees now, and they all claim that they're doing proctored exams. I have trouble believing that.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way, we saw during COVID, I don't know, have you ever heard of Chegg?
No.
Well, it's a company that sells answers. They have answers to all kinds of undergraduate courses, especially freshman, sophomore, and you can subscribe to it and you can ask it anything. So they did really well in 2020, Chegg, because students weren't being proctored. They were given exams and you could just go on Chegg, get the answers, turn them in and get an A. Okay. Now that by 2021 and 22, that was done because we were back in the proctoring business. So a key issue in this for that kind of stuff is, are you proctoring exams or not? What we call school has always, or for decades certainly, had proctored exams. So if that changes, that's a different ballgame then anyway.
Our time's up and then some. I
Okay.
don't want to stop. I just love talking to you. So it's really good to be back in touch. So
yeah.
Thank you, Ed.
Fun issue. Okay.
I don't know who's going to benefit from this. It's in a way for teachers. This must be kind of discouraging, but maybe not. We'll see. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.